Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the regular city council meeting for November the 5th. Okay. I'd like to ask everybody that can to stand as we start every meeting with a pledge of allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Under agenda additions, deletions, or amendments, item new business A, the South Lake project is going to be rescheduled. There's a schedule conflict with the corporate people there, so that will be rescheduled. If there's anybody here that was going to sign up to speak to that, you can stay as you like, or you can come back on the next time, whatever's good for you. All right, do we have anybody sign up to speak? Citizen participation? Okay. As I call you to the table, if you would identify yourself for the folks at home, and if you can keep your comments 3 or 4 minutes, I'd appreciate it. Scott Devaney. Scott. And, okay. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Good evening. I'll keep it as brief as possible. Couple of things. One, I'd like to see if the council would do something to either address the speed limit on Bel Air Drive, which I'm not endorsing that they do one way or the other, or in the alternative, do something about having more patrol out there. I've had several occasions, and I emphasize several occasions, since school has started, where I've had my vehicle on cruise, because the limit on that road is 25 miles an hour, and I've had people run me on my bumper and then literally pass me several times on that double yellow line going to and from. It doesn't matter which direction I'm going, eastbound or west, it still happens. And that's my reason for being here.
Okay, we'll refer that to the police chief, and I'll get something back to you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Scott.
Ken McCullough?
Oh,
sorry.
yes, go ahead. Any questions?
Yeah. Do you know if there's been any speed awareness days on Bel Air Drive?
I've seen speed awareness days where I've had observations, personal observations of where patrol cars have been out there and they've been in their tucked corners, if you will, to make sure that people are properly going at the mileage they should be. And I've also seen the postings where it will show in the bright orange, yellowish colored logos saying, the speed limit's 25, you're currently traveling 28, 22, whatever mileage it is that they're, currently traveling at accordingly. Okay. And I've seen those things, but again, we're talking early morning hours when kids are going to school and everything that I personally am predominantly experiencing this at. Okay. That's not to say that's the only time, because there have been other times of the day that it has occurred, but that's predominantly the time that my experience is, and it's frustrating as anything. Okay. And there was one gentleman, right or wrong, who I will say for the record, I went to their destination as they did, and I said from a distance that there wasn't any reason for their behavior. I stayed in my vehicle, and he walked over to me and said that he, quote, needed to use the restroom because he came from Alexandria and had too much coffee. That's no excuse.
Not a very good excuse. Right. But thank you, sir. We'll follow up. Ken? Good to see you again, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and the City Council. I'm here to voice my support for the Bowie Heritage Trail. This is a trail that's to be put together in Old Bowie. It was previously partially funded, I guess, and it got dropped from the budget due to some issues with permits and such. But I'd request that this be included in fiscal year 2019's funding. investment in Old Bowie is needed and deserved. This project is ready to go. All the plans are ready. I understand the permits are ready to go. This project is consistent with community goals and the sustainability plan. And this will increase safety and walkability in Old Bowie. And that's something that's needed. And this is also supported by the community. So I'd ask that you please ask the city to include this in next year's budget. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate that. Had the same last name. Welcome, ma'am, good to see you again. And coincidentally, you're talking about Heritage Trail as well.
Yes, I am. Good evening.
Good evening.
So I'd also like to voice my support for adding the funding for the Heritage Trail into the upcoming budget. I understand that it was fully funded last year, but got stalled due to lack of permits, and those permits have since been acquired. So I would ask that the city not stall the project further by not moving forward. Old Bowie is a little gem that I've been visiting for longer than I've lived in Bowie. I've taken family members from out of town to go poke through the antique shops and to just experience the quaint little aspect of Old Town Bowie. The walkability has always been challenged due to lack of infrastructure and a busy road that goes through it. So anything that we can do to improve the quality of the life in Old Town Bowie and the safety of the residents would be definitely appreciated. And I don't, even though there won't be legions of people here to speak toward this funding, I don't think you have to scratch the surface very far down to find a lot of support in the community for Old Town Bowie and improving its livability. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Dustin, who coincidentally is also talking about the Heritage Trail. Welcome, sir. Good to see you again.
Good to see you. Thanks, Mayor and Council. How you doing?
Doing well.
I'm here for the same reason. We may or may not have coordinated this, but I just want to, I know I was here before, so I'm not going to say the same stuff I did before, but I would like to ask for your support in the fiscal year 2020 budget, right? For the 2020 budget for the Heritage Trail. And in light of tonight's conversation about the indoor sports complex, you know, I know there's going to be a lot of conversation between the basketball courts, in addition to the basketball courts, and if there's any, I guess, don't know how to say this without being too controversial, I guess, but if there is any idea of maybe delaying that conversation or delaying that project to incorporate the indoor basketball courts, then that may free up some funding to fund the Heritage Trail for next year. So I don't think delaying would be a bad thing. We could get some other projects done in light of that. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your comment. Okay, and I would invite you all to stay tuned to the budget process, which will start right after the first of the year. Okay, presentations. Mr. Garner has a presentation he wants to make to a young guy who grew up in this city. I wouldn't say that I watched him grow up, but a fine young man and grew up in Bowie, went off for an exciting career in the military. And from this one grunt's perspective, I just say congratulations, Colonel. You've reached a nice milestone. And Mr. Gardner, you want to do it and present you?
Ask the council majority.
Yes.
I'd like to ask the council majority. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Colonel, join us up here? Yes. We haven't lost anybody in weeks.
No, we haven't. Join us up here. All right.
It's a momentous occasion.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. To a dear friend of ours and mine, personally, I want to say, be it here, the city of Bowie, Maryland, a proclamation. Be it hereby known to all that the council of the city of Bowie, Maryland takes great pleasure in honoring Lieutenant Colonel Henry Turner on the occasion of his 60th birthday. Further, Lieutenant Colonel has had a positive attitude and joy for living, which has earned him love and support of his family, friends, and community. now be proclaimed that Lieutenant Colonel Henry Turner will celebrate his 60th birthday surrounded by many well-wishers, and the Council of the City of Bowie, Maryland, and its Mayor, Fred Robertson, presents this proclamation to Lieutenant Colonel Henry Turner and wishes him a very happy 60th birthday. To my friend.
For those of you, the Turner family's been in the Bowie for a long, long time. His dad was a career Army.
Yes, that's correct.
And you got a couple of brothers and sister, all served in the United States military around the world. So this is an incredible family. So on behalf of all of us, we'd like to congratulate all you old people.
And if you could say a few words.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would want to tell everybody about Bowie, the city of Bowie, because we live in a great city. We moved here back in 1973, and I will tell you, the city of Bowie did not look like what I'm looking at out here in the audience right now. The city of Bowie was significantly different in that it was a housing community, a community of 11 homes, and that's what we moved here. There wasn't the infrastructure that you see now. There wasn't the businesses that you see now. There weren't the restaurants that you see now. Going to Rips was wonderful back then because that's all we had on Highway 301. And to see what my friend here, Mayor Robinson, my friend Henri Gardner, and the rest of the Bowie City Council have been able to do over these years is really remarkable. The diversity that the city of Bowie now represents is due to the fact of the city councilman and the mayor that you see here now, and that they proactively went out to make sure that everybody is welcome in the city of Bowie. They may call Philadelphia the city of brotherly love, but no, I really mean this. The city of Bowie now can hold the title the city of brotherly love because we've got a council that's all-inclusive, okay? It used to not be that way. It really didn't, and people that didn't come up from here don't realize that. So I want to say thank you, City Council, for everything that you all have done. You've been here a long time. Thank you all very much for everything.
Thank you.
Yeah, like I say, the Turner family's been an institution in the city for a long time, and we really appreciate not only your friendship as a neighbor and a friend, but your combined military service to this nation, so thank you. The only thing I was going to make on council announcements, this past Saturday, as you go out the door back there on that wall, there's a nice plaque that the council had erected to recognize John McNamara, the reporter for the Bowie Blade that was killed in June. We had his family here, and we've chosen to dedicate the press block back there in his honor. If you have an opportunity, you might want to stop and read the plaque. His family was here, and I think they were deeply moved and deeply appreciative of the fact that the city spent time and effort to recognize him, and I want to thank council for their effort to do that.
Thank you.
Okay. City manager report?
Mr. Mayor, City Council, we have no report. Our people are working hard at our day-to-day operations. Thank you.
All right. All right. Consent agenda, you have items A through I. Any? Do I have a motion? Moved by Mr. Marcus. Is there a second?
Mr. Garber.
Second by Mayor Pro Tem. Any question on the motion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. Old business indoor sports facility. And the city manager, you're going to start with a presentation for us?
Yes, sir. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council, and members of Bowie and people who ought to live in Bowie. If you all recall, the last evening of our 2019 budget process. At the very end of it, the city council saw fit to appropriate $100,000 in the budget for a feasibility study regarding a indoor court facility somewhere located in Bowie. Well, being expeditious bureaucrats that we are, before we spend any of that money, we wanted to conduct a bit of an analysis and look at some options related to this and make a presentation to you with the purpose of providing a recommendation and getting either an affirmation of that recommendation or further direction before we start to spend that money on architects and others. So I'm going to hand over to Director Sally Hine, and she's going to initiate the presentation, and that I think will help us get to the point where we can start working expeditiously toward this event. Sally?
So, Council, thank you for the opportunity to meet with you tonight. For the record, I'm Sally Hine. I'm the Director of Community Services. And I want to give you a little history, not so much to Council, who probably know this, but to the folks sitting here in our audience that might not. So in 2013, the city contracted with a professional company, the Sports Facility Advisory, SFA, to conduct a survey to determine if additional sports facilities were needed to accommodate the athletic needs of our current program participants and growth for the future. The study validated the need and prioritized the need as the number 1 need being court, number 2 being aquatics, number 3 being ice, and number 4 being an indoor field sports facility. In 2015, Council made the decision to construct a combined court ice facility that would have included 5 basketball courts with various overlays and 2 sheets of ice. The estimated cost at that time was about $25 million. By 2017, when construction estimates came in, they were over budget at $35 million. And it was at that juncture that Council made the decision to construct a facility with 2 sheets of ice and eliminated the court option. That construction is now budgeted at just over $25 million. The decision, I believe, was based on the fact that the existing ice arena was past its useful life, and the expansion to 2 sheets of ice would provide, in the long term, a higher rate of return on the annual operating costs. During the FY18 budget, at the behest of court users, as Mr. Lott just said, Council put $100,000 in the budget for us to look a little harder at the possibility of doing something for additional basketball and volleyball courts. So that brings us to where we are today, which is we are now in the final design stage of a 2-sheet, $25 million ice arena, and we have $100,000 appropriated to look into the possibility of adding some additional court space. The city does not have a full staff of engineers, but we do have a staff of pretty smart people with areas of expertise related to sports and a true desire to be good stewards of the city money. Since a needs study was already conducted, staff began a preliminary investigation and analysis to try to narrow down some possible locations and construction types before contracting with a company to design and construct a building and to get a professional cost estimate. In a few minutes, Matt Reno, our project manager, will be sharing with you what we have been able to assemble from conversations with professionals in the field and extrapolation from similar projects and reports. Please note again, remember, that we do not profess to be engineers nor architects, and our numbers may be significantly different from those we will obtain from professional engineers. They will do site surveys, and real-time construction costs will be factored in. If anything, I expect the numbers we're going to share with you tonight will probably be low. If Council decides to move forward with the construction of a new court facility, what we have tried to do is suggest a few locations in the city where the property is already owned by the city, so that will lessen the cost. And construction, our other consideration was that construction on the site would not remove an existing field or facility for inventory, so we would not take an existing soccer field off, which is already flat, and plunk something down there. Several construction types have been included in our review, from the bubble, like Holy Trinity has, to a brick and mortar building like our current gym. Many sizes can be considered, from a very small one-court facility, community facility, to one large enough to host national tournaments. The size recommendation assumes, the recommendation we're going to make at the end of the proposal here tonight assumes you'd like the best possible return on the annual operating expense, because was one of the premises for the ice arena construction. Do note that it is our belief that should you choose to move forward with constructing additional court space, you should view this as a community recreational amenity, not one that will ever pay for itself. As court participants have not shown themselves to be willing to pay higher court fees or utilize off hours as ICE participants have. So with that, as a basic introduction, I'm going to turn this over to Matt, and he's going to go through the PowerPoint presentation that we had posted on the website last week for you to review in advance. And then there'll be a couple of other proposals by other groups who are here tonight with us that have some other ideas for how we can move forward. Matt?
As he moves up there, Mr. Mayor, after he finishes his pitch, Cliff Pulliam from Greater Mount Nebo is going to make a short presentation, and Mr. Courtney Booker from Community Housing Initiatives will also talk a little bit about this. All right, Matt, go ahead.
Thank you, Sally. Thank you, Al. Good evening. Yes, sir.
Ray, I didn't recognize our state delegate, Marvin Holmes, has joined us tonight on the night before, a busy day for him tomorrow. Welcome, sir. Thank you for coming.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. And
It's nice to be unopposed in an election, by the way.
so the presentation you received, obviously, in your council package has a lot of content detail. My focus tonight is just to go over some key points within that for you for the sake of time. One of the four elements that we really find that we need to sort of get a handle on is going to deal with facility size. So we wanted to break it down into two options. You've got what would be considered a one-court facility or a two-court facility. One court would mean you've got a high school or college basketball court overlaid with two perpendicular middle school-sized courts or volleyball courts. And that would be option one. Option two would be double that. So you'd have the ability to run 4 middle school, 4 volleyball, or 2 high school. So that's when you break it down into facility size, we really wanted you to just understand it's 1 court or 2 court, and that would be option one or option two. So there's a sort of a diagram here. You can see colors are a little bit skewed, but you've got essentially a large court, green court in the center, which is your high school, and you've got your perpendiculars that run, which are volleyball or middle school. Break it down, you double that, mirror it, you essentially could have a 4-court facility. So our current gymnasium falls in between option one and option two, size-wise. Option two is a larger facility. It allows us to run those 4 courts where currently we can't run 4 middle school courts at our current gymnasium. And option one is slightly smaller, allowing you to run a single high school court or 2 middle school courts. The other focus was potential locations. Staff had looked at 14 city-owned properties, and then also 1 additional non-city-owned property. There's a number of variables that we looked at with regards to ascertaining sort of the benefits of each of those with regards to where a potential facility could be constructed. You'll see we ran over a lot of them are city parks. We took into account variables such as access, utilities, is the lot cleared, is it forested, et cetera. So there's several criteria that we had looked at, and of course with any of these facilities, you've got pros and cons for each. Thirdly, we wanted you guys to sort of get a handle and understanding on the possible types of construction out there. Air dome is also known as bubble. If you ever mention to an air dome company a bubble, they're going to quickly correct you and say, oh no, it's not a bubble, it's an air dome. So we will focus on air dome as one option, tension structure as a second option. Third would be what most people know as a metal building. It's also known as a pre-engineered metal building. And then lastly, of course, you would have your brick and mortar facility. So the air dome offers, benefits. There's one particular component that we want to note with an air dome, and air domes are not conducive to wood court surfacing because they use a tremendous amount of outside air to keep the dome inflated. The humidity content is such that you can't have wood courts in an air dome. The other issue or concern with air domes would be lateral snow pressure. They typically are designed to building standards. They shed snow. But if you get a heavy snowstorm that builds up on the sides and you don't keep that cleared, it puts lateral pressure, which can cause potential collapse or damage to the facility. Here's a couple concepts. You'll see, obviously, with any air dome, nowadays the different facilities are giving you different colors and fabrics and things to snazz them up and make them look a little bit prettier. This is Holy Trinity. Staff did take a visit. We went to Holy Trinity. We spent about an hour and a half there. We talked with them about their experience, and it works for them. That facility works for them. It may not work for us. It may not work for other entities. But this is what the inside of that facility looks like. There's restrooms and office area here with a multi-use court surface. The second type of structure that you may or may not be familiar with is what's considered to be a tension fabric structure. Essentially, it is a superstructure made of steel, and then what happens is they take an extremely high tension fabric and they stretch it over the top of the building, and they can form the walls and the sides and the roof with the material. The other option is that you can skin the lower half of the sides with metal to give it a sort of a two-tone look and also to prevent any type of a damage at low level from striking it with a knife or a blade or something like that. It's a least expensive option for wood court. You can use wood courts in a tension structure, and it's the least costly. This is what the inside of a number of different structures constructed around the country look like. This one, upper left corner, you'll see, you can see the superstructure of the metal. This is a fabric membrane that's stretched at high tension over top. You can incorporate into the fabric a translucent type of material, so you can use natural lighting, reducing your energy costs. They've got, in this one they particularly have, synthetic turf as well. From the exterior, these can be designed and customized into any shape that you would like them to look. If you want it to look like sort of a rounded structure, it could be the upper left. The lower one here on the bottom, you'll see, they actually did the wainscoting, and they took this and they ended up having a different type of bottom structure, but the top is all tension fabric. It's over the top. So the third structure or consideration would be what you know as a metal building. This is very similar to the new design of the ice arena. 80% of the ice arena design, the new ice arena is using metal roofing and metal sides and metal walls. So that would be a component of the pre-engineered building. Two examples. Upper one here, this is Howard County Complex. It's called the MAC. Howard County constructed this in 2010. And then the lower one, you'll see it's a metal building. You can give it a facade that makes it look like any particular structure that would appeal to the setting it sits in. Interior-wise, you wouldn't really know much different than sort of any other brick and mortar type of building, in the sense that it's steel super trusses supported by steel framing, and then it's metal skin walls all the way around, and they're all heated and conditioned, and they're insulated for that. Lastly would be your brick and mortar building. We all know that most of our facilities are all brick and mortar. That's what we've done in the past. It works for our buildings, however, it's the most expensive. And there are alternatives. There's three other options prior to this are less costly alternatives that the city could consider. Upper right here would be a Kentland facility by the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission. That was built recently, I think 2 years ago. And then, of course, our gymnasium in the lower left corner there. Inside, you can see a lot of them use natural light as a way of keeping down on your energy costs. So the last factor to take into account would be cost. So what we've presented here are option 1 on the left and option 2. You'll notice the green is the air dome structure. Then you would end up going with tension structure, metal building structure, and then lastly, brick and mortar. So when you're looking at the numbers, you're looking at anywhere from 7.3 million to 12.9 million for those 4 different types of construction. Staff was able to meet with CRC at their last meeting. We presented them a draft of this presentation that you've seen tonight, and these are their comments that they've provided. We've summarized them for you, and they're in your presentation there. And I believe tonight we also have 2 additional presenters. We're going to ask Reverend Weaver to come up from the Greater Mount Nebo AME Church to present, and then followed by Reverend Weaver would be Mr. Courtney Booker with the Community Housing Initiative. Reverend Weaver?
Welcome, sir.
Mr. Mayor, good evening. Council members, good evening. Actually, I am not going to be the presenter tonight. We have one of the representatives from the Richard Allen Community Development Corporation that will address the property and the concept that's being presented.
Okay. Welcome, sir.
Welcome. Thank you, and thank you for allowing us to speak tonight. Members of the council, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Pro Tem, and Mr. Lott also. Thank you very much. Let me start out by making a slight revision to the site title. It's being referred to as the Greater Mount Nebo Site Proposal. Actually, the partnership with the city, should that occur, would not be with Greater Mount Nebo, it would be with the Richard Allen Community Development Corporation, of which I'm a board member. Of course, as you know, there can be no partnerships between municipalities and religious organizations, and no commingling of funds, and none of that would happen here. Any option that's built on the land that is presently owned by Greater Mount Nebo, but would be deeded over to Richard Allen CDC before anything is built, would not involve any management or participation whatsoever by the church. And also there was another item on the report about the acreage. We have a 90-acre site there that's currently owned by the church. The church uses 1.6 of those acres. The church will eventually build an additional sanctuary, but will not take up much more of the room. So in essence, it's not 4.5 acres that is listed on the report. There was actually no limit placed on any development that might occur from this partnership. So that means that anything that we build in cooperation with the city of Bowie is almost unlimited expansion potential there, okay? And as far as the mode of transferring the land to be used by the city, all options are on the table there. We own the land free and clear. So as far as the distinction between city-owned land and non-city-owned land, in this case, that distinction should be rendered just about moot, given the fact that we haven't started negotiations, but, you know, like I said, everything is on the table, okay? All right, so let me get to these slides, the presentation. Can I get the next slide, please? Thank you, thank you. This is the campus. This is a 90-acre campus. It's on the corner of Routes 301, Crane Highway, and Route 214, Central Avenue. And it is centrally located, maybe about 10 minutes from here. It's about maybe a minute or two from the proposed South Lake Liberty Sports Park that's further up on 214. It's also minutes from Route 50, and of course Bowie is centrally located half an hour in each direction from DC and Baltimore airports. The wooded area that you see at the bottom there, that area alone is about 30 acres. All right, so that's the area that fronts both Central Avenue and Route 301. So that whatever we would build on that section of the land could have visibility to both of the roads, which makes it a unique site. That plus the fact that there are no heavy residential developments nearby, so there would be minimal impact on residents as opposed to some of the other sites that you're considering. And the busy roads there, the well-traveled roads there are amenable to a site of that size. So we believe that that's only one of the reasons why this would be an ideal site to build anything that is going to get built. All right, and I've gone on a little bit about Greater Mount Nebo AME. They've started the Richard Allen CDC about 20 years ago, and it's a 501c3 IRS designated 501c3 organization to promote the missions of the church in the development of the 90 acres. And of course, the missions of the church are as listed here: community development activities, social educational skills, development for youth, intergenerational mental, physical, and spiritual health and wellness initiatives, and affordable housing for individuals and families. And indeed, one of the projects that we are already started on is senior housing on the land. 10 acres have already been designated over to the Richard Allen CDC for that purpose. So we're looking at a combination of active senior and or assisted senior housing with a campus. And we believe that that senior housing would be a great complement to whatever athletic facility would be built, because that was on our agenda as well, so that our seniors would have use of the amenities in the athletic facility. But the bottom line is, as I said, we're only using about 1.6 of the acres. The land is owned free and clear, and we want to use the land to serve the community of Bowie. That's the primary mission here, however we can, all right? So we want to, in one way, to serve the community, would participate in helping the city provide for the recreational needs of the citizens of Bowie. All right, I've already mentioned where the site, the Richard Allen CDC site, is located. All right, it's, we believe that it will be of great benefit to surrounding businesses in Bowie, because the traffic, this is going to be a destination not only statewide, but nationwide, because the future of athletics in municipalities are multi-sport facilities that can house major international recreation, major international competition. So the tournaments that we could not hold at the city gym would be able to be held here, which would generate a lot more income than the city gym did. And perhaps with the items that we plan to put in this facility, the gym would not operate at a loss, as the city gym has for a number of years, and as has the ice skating rink. Okay. Now, I've addressed that we own the campus free and clear. Nearby is Pointer Ridge, a housing community, Bowie Town Center, Hall Road. You got the Melford Business Park just a couple of minutes away. And the South Lake Liberty Sports Complex. Now, the South Lake Liberty Sports Complex, as everybody knows, is going to be a major several hundred-acre sports facility with outdoor fields, hotels, residential. Now, we're not looking to compete with Liberty Sports Park. We're looking to complement that. All right, so there will come a time, I don't know if it would be in the initial build, but the plan is to put indoor turf fields on this facility. Of course, the South Lake Liberty Park will have no basketball. We'll have basketball. We're looking at a minimum of 4 to 5 basketball courts, but I'll go over that in a later slide. Okay. All right, the SFA study, the indoor sports facility feasibility study has been referenced, And of course, as you know, it recommends a multi-sport indoor facility. The Maryland Sports Authority has recognized that there are very few such facilities in the state of Maryland, none that actually serve the city of Bowie. You've got the Wayne Curry facility over in Landover, which is a very impressive facility. It's a multi-sport facility, but it does not feature basketball. It has swimming, it has gymnastics, it has sports fields, indoor and outdoor, and it has running track. And it's fully subscribed. Just like the city gym, it's busting at the seams on weekends, especially when there are a couple of clubs in there having competitions at once. And the Wayne Curry is more of a local facility to nearby residents. The residents of Bowie, of course, can go over there and participate, but like I said, you know, it's tough to do so on weekends. We took a look at the Aspen Institute's Project Play report, and I'll quote what they say, and of course, any references in here are available to your request as far as sites in the reports. Today's complex youth sports system necessitates significant multi-purpose facilities to develop athletes and play competitive sports. And it also recognizes the fact that parents spend incredible amounts of money for their kids to participate in these sports because it involves substantial travel, domestic and international. There was a story done on Real Sports. James Brown hosted it, and they talked about one such family. I believe that study was given to Mr. Lott. I think he gave it to Mr. Mayor about this one particular family, I believe in this area, that's spending in the area of, is it about $10,000, $15,000 a month? To $10,000, $15,000 a year to ferry their kids to these various camps, tournaments, and sporting events around the country. In fact, there was recently a sporting event that was to take place here in this area, but because of the rain, the fields were too soggy. It had to be canceled. You had people who traveled from hundreds of miles away to come to this thing, and they could not compete. That's why an indoor turf facility could be very helpful and complementary to the outdoor turf facility over at the Liberty Sports Park. We believe that this is an opportunity, could be a one-time opportunity to create this type of a dynamic, because this facility that we build here is going to be a destination facility. It's going to be a landmark community asset being used by parents, families from around the country, maybe even around the world. And of course, it's going to be an all-day facility. What that means is that the entire family would be able to stay in this facility all day. It has activities for toddlers up to 80 to 90-year-olds, seniors. And you know, there are very few facilities that can make that claim. We believe that we have the opportunity to build that here for the citizens of Bowie. We had addressed the fact earlier that multi-sport facilities can hold large tournaments. We don't believe that a 1 or 2 court remedy would be a long-term remedy, especially in terms of the square footage needed to accommodate these types of tournaments. And this facility would be designed specifically not only to serve the community, but to house these tournaments which bring in a lot of income to the cities. And you know, I believe that one such facility that was addressed in that report, several thousand acres of outdoor fields, I believe it's in Indiana, brings $20 million a year to that particular little town that had been struggling before. Now this is where basically the rubber meets the road. This is what we're proposing. Now, of course, this is going to be scalable. This is going to be built in stages. But at the very least, we believe that the $15 to $20 million bill on a 45,000 square foot footprint would be enough to house basketball, volleyball courts, at least 5 courts. A unique aspect of that would be a training court. I have somebody here who's a basketball trainer whose idea this was, and I think it's a fantastic idea. What a training court is, it's owed to the fact that Prince George's County is one of the leading producers of NBA basketball players in the country. There are at least about 20 current NBA players that come out of Prince George's County, many of whom played at the city gym, and there'll be more to come. Now, when these players come home during the off season, one of the common complaints is that they have nowhere to play. They can't just go down to the city park and play. They have contractual restrictions, risk clauses that requires that they not put their careers at risk by playing pickup ball. So they need some place to play where they can either rent out the gym, you know, like renting out the city gym without closing the entire gym to everybody else, which is what has happened in the past. Rent out the gym, and also there'd be a facility there with the state-of-the-art equipment for their training. So they're training year-round, right? And there are basketball trainers whose job it is to train professional, college, high school, even middle school players. And they need the latest state-of-the-art weight equipment and training equipment. We can provide that in what we would call an MVP gym or a VIP gym, or it might be named after whichever basketball player puts up the money. All right? But the bottom line is, this is going to be a joint funding enterprise, not only a joint enterprise between RACDC and the city, but corporate interests, private donors, sneaker companies, some NBA players. And we've reached out to a number of people who are very anxious to perhaps see this happen. Okay? And that's one of the major advantages that our location has over the other locations. The city's not paying the freight alone. Okay? Now, for your $17 million most expensive brick and mortar option, one of the locations that I'm about to show you, which is a competing community center in Ellicott City, that total bill was $20 million. There's basketball, there's swimming, there's climbing walls, there's weights, there's classrooms, there's meeting rooms. In fact, when I was visiting over there were classes going on in there. There were students being tutored at that community. It's a true community center, not just a basketball gym. Now, it's a $15 million bill. It was an additional $5 million because of some site issues on that particular land. But we believe that for $15 to $20 million, we can have something resembling this. The indoor track, 400 meter. Turf fields might be a little bit tight on a $15 to $20 million budget, but that can be added later. And the building can be designed to be expanded for that. And of course, there's the pool, the Olympic-sized pool. It's going to be lap swimming, competitive swimming, and a community pool with physical therapy for the seniors. The pool in Ellicott City, the Roger Carter Center, has a retracting roof. So it's indoor-outdoor. All right? 2 basketball courts there, by the way. Squash courts. Squash is a very underserved sport, but it is a very good scholarship sport. And it is about to be an Olympic sport. So there is a possibility that the next generation of squash players comes out of the facility that we built out of Prince George's County. And they could be Olympians, okay? Likewise with the swimming. Swimming is very crucial because, especially in our community, there are too many young people that never learn to swim because there are not the same public swimming pools that you have in DC and most cities. The pools are in private clubs for the most part. Dues are very expensive there, so most people don't join. Therefore, they don't have access to the water. They never learn to swim. I believe that with our facility, there should be an allowance made for lower income people, some kind of a subsidy. But, you know, we can get to that if and when we get there. Golf, putt-putt and digital. Batting cages, indoor. Exercise equipment and weights. These are all things that we project can happen in the first basic built in the $15 to $20 million range. And of course, you got the usual dance studio, aerobics, floor exercise, These are all the things that the CRC had addressed and what they want, in addition to basketball. And then the Audubon car racing. This is an electric go-kart racing track. There are a couple in Baltimore. I believe there's one in Virginia. There's not one that serves this area. We're reaching out to the developers, the owners of that, to see whether there's any possibility of perhaps leasing them the land to operate this kind of a facility on the campus alongside of the athletic center. And of course, the community space, which makes it a community center. You need meeting rooms, you need child care, toddler and child daycare, after school care. Where do the kids in Bowie go when they get out of school to do their homework? And perhaps have some recreation and mentorship, and also commingle and play with their classmates and people in the community. We propose to have that sort of a facility here. Concessions would be there. Office suites with conference rooms. Community organizations always need office suites. Community organizations always need conference room. You can never have too many of them. Now, this is the first of the competing sites that we highlighted in our report. This is the Meadowbrook, Columbia, Howard County, okay? 35,000 square feet of gymnasium space, and of course, it's got indoor basketball, volleyball, field hockey, badminton, jump rope. And I believe it also has a commercial kitchen in it. This is in Columbia, Maryland. Gary J. Arthur in Cooksville, also Howard County. All right, this is a joint enterprise between the Departments of Recreation and Health, Office of the Aging. Fitness room, gymnasium with 2 basketball courts, indoor walking track, multi-purpose rooms, commercial kitchen, 4 activity rooms, all right? North Laurel Community Center, Laurel, Maryland, also Howard County. All right, this is on Whiskey Bottom Road. And this has many of the same amenities of the other facilities. Also a partnership with the Office of the Aging, fitness room, commercial kitchen, double gym, preschool classrooms, 4 multi-purpose rooms, a game room, senior activity room, and outdoor space. All right, there is also a plan afoot to build a pool here, $20 million to build a swimming pool. And that's already been approved and it's in the works. The Roger Carter Center that I referenced earlier, Ellicott City, 46,000 square feet. All right. The swimming pool has a splash pad, which is a real shallow, 1 foot deep area for toddlers to play in. But it also has a professional sized pool. Basketball, volleyball, classrooms. This is another place I visited where there were classes going on at that time. Fitness and exercise rooms, and state-of-the-art cardio and pre-course strength training equipment. And of course, a climbing wall. $15,000 for the building, $20,000 total build. Now, these 4 facilities, as I've mentioned, are in Howard County, all right? Howard County has a population of about 320,000 people. Okay, it's being served by 4 of these major facilities. Prince George's County has a population nearing 1 million. It's being served by how many? You got Wayne Curry, you got a facility down in Fort Washington. And those facilities are packed normally. I don't see any reason, and we don't see any reason why the citizens of Bowie shouldn't have a facility like this in their backyard, especially given the disparity in the populations being served and the number of facilities serving them. This is the Rolls-Royce, or the Bentley of facilities. This is the St. James Center that just opened a couple of months ago in Springfield. Now, the 2 gentlemen who built this facility are 2 young black men from Southeast DC. All right? They are Cornell graduates, I believe, and they are investment bankers. And they put together the funding along with a British investment banking firm to build this facility on land that they bought in Springfield. They never talk about how much they spent, but, you know, people tend to talk a little bit, and the rumor is that it's $200 million. 450,000 square feet on 20 acres. Now, we're not proposing that we build something like this on our land.
Thank you.
You're welcome. But I do say that just for reference purposes, that little wooded area I showed you on our land that is 30 acres, this is 20 acres. Okay? So it's almost unlimited expansion potential. We took a tour of this facility. The tour took an hour. All right? There's a restaurant in this place. Let me read off some of the things in here. Okay? Reading off some of these things are going to take a while. There's so much stuff. All right? It's got the indoor turf field, 2 NHL regulation ice rinks, 4 full-length basketball courts, which transform into 9 volleyball courts. It's got an Olympic regulation-sized pool, 6 batting cages, 8 international regulation-sized squash courts. By the way, that's a major market, squash tournaments from around the world. That's something that we could tap into. 7 golf simulators. That's where you have a screen, a putting box, a driving box, and a computer, which estimates the size of your drive. That's at the finer golf clubs. All right? 3,000 feet of climbing and bouldering walls. It's got a gymnastics training center. It's got a 50,000 square foot health club gym. It's got a spa. It's got a MedStar Sports Medicine Center that just opened up. That's also going to use the health club facility. And they also have plans for a 6,000 square foot indoor water park and an active entertainment center with obstacle courses, zip lines, trampolines, virtual reality, and a gaming theater. The restaurant is about to open, and there's a sports shop there. This facility is unique because all of these businesses integrated into this are not subcontracted out. This is not leased space. These are all businesses that are owned by the developers of this facility. It's a business incubator. So all these businesses that are in this business will eventually spread out into their own individual footprints, all owned by the owners of this facility. All right? Like I said, this is the Bentley of sports facilities. And of course, you got the Pitt Moyer Recreation Center in Annapolis, that's on Anne Arundel County. A little bit anticlimactic to show this slide after the St. James slide. All right. Now, so in wrapping this up, I think the question is, what is to be the long-term vision of recreation and athletics for the citizens of Bowie? Because I think we have an opportunity here, as close as we are to the existing facility that's just been approved, about a minute away, to create this sports and entertainment corridor along Route 301 and Route 214. Okay, you've got the trampoline place opening across the street from our land, and you've got the new houses. I don't know how many housing units you all finally settled in down, but I'm imagining it's somewhere around 300-something housing units, if not 800. Okay. And these are people who are going to be looking for recreation. And the recreation that we build in that area is the most centrally located recreation that you can build, considering the locations of your other lands. You're not taking away an existing use to build here. You're not overcrowding a winding, narrow, one-lane in each direction road to build here. And you have visibility from Route 301 and Route 214. And I would also reiterate that Greater Mount Nebo Church has no involvement in what's to be built here. There will be no Bibles handed out at basketball games. There'll be no recruitment. It's going to be the same as you're visiting the city gym or any other gym.
I still tell you, in those classrooms, there'll be a lot of prayers.
Not even close. Not even close. Right. So what we're trying to do is to not change your vision. We're just trying to enhance it.
Okay.
And I know you have a problem with the church road site with the hockey and your high water table over there. Just keep in mind that we have space for it. In case you decide you want to put it all under one roof, we do have the space for it. All right? So that is our presentation, and thank you for allowing us to present.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor.
My only closing comment on, I know you got another speaker, but I was just going to say, Reverend Weaver, you got somebody coming up behind you. He's got preacher material. All right, Mr. City Manager.
Mr. Booker. Mr. Courtney Booker from Community Housing Initiative, he has a bit of a pitch regarding potential funding and other aspects of this project.
Welcome, sir.
How are you? Well, thank you for giving me this opportunity to come speak with you all today.
Step a little closer, Mr. Booker.
Is that better?
Yeah, speak it, that way the people at home can hear you.
That's fine.
That's good.
Is that better? Okay, thank you. So sometimes it's not great to follow children, animals, and a great presentation, but I'll do my best. So today I'm here to talk about a multi-sports facility as well. Ours is a little different in the sense that in some ways it's similar, but we're proposing a public-private partnership. And so this partnership would involve taking advantage of the existing facility you have, the ice rink, and converting that into a multi-sport facility. And that facility would house basketball, volleyball, and other sports. So what we're proposing are 8 courts of basketball. 2 of those courts would be being converted with a turf would be provided on those 2 courts. So then, or that court would be a rubberized court so that you could have indoor training for soccer, lacrosse, baseball, and other sports, as well as training would be also provided at that facility. As you know, this is the existing Bowie ice rink, and so we believe that this, because this is an asset that you all have, we think we can come in and convert that asset to provide value back to the city, and I'll talk to you about how that value will be added back. Something happened to the slide here. But what we think is you will save a lot of time and money by adapting existing property. There will be ample parking, and because of the location, the current location, you already have kind of built-in destination from other people understanding where the location is. So you don't have to educate people again about this new facility. And it's centrally located, as you know already. This is kind of an example of what the facility could look like. Obviously, we're not going to commit to a look and feel at this point until we do a little bit more assessments and if there were some approval done, obviously. So we think what we're providing here is we're asking for where we will fit the bill for the building of the facility. The city would then enter into a long-term lease. At a break-even point, we would then do a rev share back with the city on all of the revenue that would come out of the facility. We would also, we believe this would also increase tax revenues. And again, this is an asset that you're currently figuring out what you're going to do with. So we would come in, convert this facility, bring in the additional revenue, share the revenue with the city, as well as tax revenue that would be generated by the facility. Now, again, so the benefits back to the city are you're going to derive value from an asset that's currently kind of uncertain. You're going to meet constituent needs that were brought out in the proposal that was done some time ago with respect to the assessment. You're going to increase brand awareness of the city of Bowie because we will have basketball tournaments, volleyball tournaments. So Bowie will become known throughout the region as an area that houses significant sporting events. The other is the enhanced economic development that would be derived from these tournaments. And the proposal we are providing, we believe, would have a reduced capital expenditure for the city because we will be footing the bill on the front end, and you would just be paying out over time. So that would reduce the amount of potential economic impact on any of your current budgets. And we also think it will enhance quality of life for the city, because you'll have this facility that then could be utilized by all the Bowie residents. We would be looking at having a variety of things in there, such as meeting spaces, weight room, and other things. But again, a lot of that, as far as what we would propose, would come out after we did an assessment and did some more studies. But this is kind of the direction we're going. So there are two groups involved here. I'm from ADDO, which is the group that would be basically managing the facility, and our partner is Community Housing Initiative, who would actually be building the facility. And they have extensive experience in building. They currently have done, as you can see here, $150 million worth of real estate projects in Prince George's County, and have another $100 million of those in progress within PG County. And they have experience in working with both variety of cities as well as the county in getting through permits and all the other potential red tape that may slow down a build. So that's it. It's pretty simple. If there are any questions at this time?
We'll be getting questions as we go through. We got a lot of people that are
Okay.
signed up to speak, but we appreciate it very much.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor. I'd like to wrap up the presentation by saying this. As a professional staffers, we're required to give you our position and our recommendation. If the council chooses to proceed with the construction of an indoor court facility, staff's recommendation is that we move forward with the hiring of a consultant to analyze the feasibility and cost of constructing option number 2, which is the 30,000+ square foot facility, as a tension structure or a metal building, either on 197th adjacent to golf course, Allen Pond Park, or the current ice arena location. Now, should the council be interested in pursuing a partnership with another entity such as Greater Mount Nebo or their foundation, or the Community Housing Initiative, we're prepared to implement that also. And since our intent here is to narrow down the scope of the feasibility study so we expeditiously spend our funding. Thank you, sir.
All right, questions of staff?
Yes.
Wait, what? This wasn't a public hearing, was it? Oh, we have people sign up? Okay. All righty.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Oh, thank you. Carrie Bridges, Madam Chair. Welcome in. Is it desirable, you're still president of the club and directing all those activities and all the other things?
She's a busy woman.
I am busy.
Yes, you are.
Welcome. Good to see you, ma'am.
Good evening, Mayor Robinson, City Council, City staff, and more importantly, citizens of Bowie. Once again, I stand before you on behalf of Kevin Holmes, the president of Bowie Boys and Girls Club, South Bowie Boys and Girls Club, that offers basketball, cheerleading, and wrestling, and volleyball, the pickleball community, and as the chair of the Community's Recreation Committee here for the city. Asking you to come to a resolve over the need for more hardwood floors in the city of Bowie. This has been a conversation for the last 4, almost 5 years. The issue is, it is a conversation. I, as the representative of the previous mentioned groups, now would like to see action outside of talking about hardwood floors. I know we cannot revisit how this conversation originally started, nor how it ended up with another facility being placed ahead of what the citizens of this city stated was needed the most. We cannot go back. We can and need to move forward, but with a purpose. As Maximus from the movie Gladiator stated, the time for half measure and talk is over. Let's make a decision that will be beneficial for the children in the city, the elders in the city, and any and everyone in between. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for everything that you do in the community. Renee Carter? Ms. Carter will be followed by Thomas Cheek. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, council members, and city employees. I'm a 16-year resident of the city of Bowie, and I understand that the current proposal does not have a swim facility included in it. But my daughter was a swimmer for her whole 16 years in this county. She swam for Bowie High School for 4 years. The whole time she was swimming, we were running all over the county to go to swim meets. Even she swam for Bowie High School. They practiced at Prince George's Community College. And it was just a major inconvenience for me. So I think, as a resident, if we could have a facility that included a swimming pool, I think that would be a great asset. And I know a lot of people that swim that live in the city of Bowie, and it's just a hardship on the parents. So that's what I wanted to say, since we're considering potentially another facility.
Okay, thank you very much. Thomas Cheek. Welcome, sir. Mr. Cheek will be followed by Karen Parker. Welcome, sir.
Good evening. Good evening, Mayor. Thanks for having me here today. I'm here because I'm a 40-year coach in the Prince George's County community. And what I'm hearing today is it's exciting to see that the city of Bowie, the Richard Allen Project, is trying to help out the community as far as sports. But what I'm also hearing is that the city of Bowie is committed to basketball. Basketball is not the major thing in the area. We have other sports, football, we have soccer that's completely taking over this area. And I see nothing in their plan where soccer is involved and where football is involved. The Richard Allen Project offers a lot to the community, not only in sports, but other avenues that a kid can take and learn from what they have over there. So I'm here to support, as a coach for 40 years in this area, that the Richard Allen Project should be really considered in this case. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Karen Parker. Welcome, ma'am.
Hello, Mayor and City Council folks. My name is Karen, and I am a volunteer at Bowie High School. My daughter also attended Bowie High School. And I just want to mention what the other young lady just said about having a swimming pool, because my daughter also was on the swim team, and we always had to go to Prince George's Community College for practices. She was also on the lacrosse team, and usually lacrosse practice starts in February, and it would be wonderful to have an indoor facility that had turf in February, as opposed to being outside in February along with the parents for practice. And also volleyball. There's a lot of students at Bowie High School that play volleyball, and it would be great to have tournaments in the city of Bowie if we had a volleyball facility. And what I haven't seen mentioned, it would be also awesome, would have indoor tennis as well. So we could have a multi facility that offered all these sports indoors. Would be great. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Dave Davis. Oh, welcome, sir.
Hey, good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council. Thank you for the opportunity to come and speak before you today. My name is Dave Naves. I'm a former Harlem Globetrotter, and I currently serve on the board of directors of the National Basketball Retired Players Association, which is an association of former NBA, ABA, Harlem Globetrotters, and WNBA players. I'm a longtime Bowie resident. I've been here in Bowie since 1996. I have participated in Bowie basketball as a parent, a coach, and a player in adult leagues from under 35 to 55 and over. My son started participating in Bowie basketball when he was about 10 years old, and because of the coaching he got through the Bowie, South Bowie Boys and Girls Club, he was able to play for the Mather Catholic and later obtain an athletic scholarship at Howard University. So not only do Bowie produce NBA players, but also the sports programs in Bowie train our kids to the point where they are able to get college scholarships as a result of their participation. However, from the very beginning, it was always challenging to find court time at any level.
Building the Bowie City Gym helped a little bit, but over the years, it has also become very oversubscribed. And these facilities provide more than just basketball. They provide refuge for our children, a place they can go where there's supervision, where if there's classrooms, they can study, or they can participate in various sports that's provided at these facilities. It's also a place where the community organizations can meet, where they can have classes and other activities that benefit both our youth and our adults. So I'm here to say that building a facility on the Greater Mount Nebo site makes a lot of sense. The site is capable of accommodating the largest proposed facility, which is option 2, in addition to providing field space for outdoor sports. So the coach who was talking about, football and soccer and things of that nature, when you talk about 90 acres, there's a lot of things that can be done on 90 acres, that can benefit our community. I believe that building on the Greater Mount Nebo property is a cost-effective approach and can serve not only Bowie, but the entire Prince George's County as well. So I'm asking that you give a strong consideration to building this facility on the Greater Mount Nebo property. And one other thing I want to emphasize too is that, we have to take consideration that Bowie is growing. Every year we've been here, and I heard the Lieutenant Colonel say that when he came in 1973, it was a lot different than what it was then. And we have to realize that it's going to be a lot different 10 years from now. If we're going to bring businesses to our community, we also need to think about attracting the employees. And those employees that's coming into Bowie, they want to make certain that just as there's good restaurants and schools and things of that nature, they want to make certain that there's good recreation facilities for their children. And we have to consider that. So when we talk about the cost, we also have to look at how we're going to grow as a community to support these types of facilities. So we have to look forward into the future to realize that we have to start thinking big, to make certain that we're going to take care of our future residents when they move in.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your comment. Alexandria Roan. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you. So I'm Alexandra Roan. My background is in exercise physiology. I'm a professional bodybuilder. I train pro athletes, young athletes, and I do stretch therapy for seniors, athletes, general population. And I'm in favor of the Richard Allen project as well. And just a couple of reasons, just my background, I do teach a couple of fitness classes in the area. And when it's hot outside, we do train outside. And, the adults that are out there, their kids can come. But when the weather gets like it is today, we can't necessarily do that. And their children don't have, the proper supervision or daycare to be watched. So I do see this facility as an opportunity. And that, we actually hold those in other counties because there's nothing really here indoor to support that. So but I do have a lot of clients and parents that do want something in Bowie because this is where I live and this is where I meet a lot of people, a lot of my clients. But also in terms of the professional athletes, just having that one-stop shop. Sometimes I have to go in, some commercial gyms that are for weightlifting and other things, not necessarily for their particular sport. And the privacy is a factor. Number one, especially if they're getting stretched too, but also if they're training, they could actually do their specific sport there, go weight train, do exercises in the pool, different things like that in one place. So just bringing them there is very attractive to them as that type of athlete. But also for young athletes, when you are a parent, and this is what a lot of their parents tell me, is one kid plays one sport and another one plays another. So you have to travel all over, this county to really put your kids in their favorite sports. So having the soccer fields, basketball courts, volleyball courts, swimming, you give these kids access to a lot of different sports. And at a young age, you're not really into one particular sport. You're into multi-sports until you figure out which one you actually enjoy playing. So that gives them exposure to that as well. And just the seniors, I do like the impact of the seniors. They don't necessarily want to come to me inside of a commercial gym, where a lot is going on. Everybody's on top of each other, just doing their own thing. They do want the peace and quiet and be able to sit there and relax, get stretched, and do their actual activities too. So just promoting health and wellness in our community a lot more, especially in Bowie, which I don't see a lot of it taking place here as well. So I'm definitely in favor, and one advocate, especially my peers as well, other trainers in this area. I do strength and conditioning, so I know I talk to a lot of basketball trainers, a lot of soccer trainers, coaches, and things like that, and they have said this was an issue as well. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Viola Underdo? I see it around my phone. Okay. Hey, we could have made a couple of bucks on that. We could have funded this thing. Viola Underdo? Oh, there you welcome in.
Yes, my name is Viola Underdo. First of all, thank you all for your service. I think you're doing a great job. We have a AAA rating, I believe, so we appreciate that. I want to come at you from a different angle. I want to come at you from a safety perspective. A little about myself. I'm from North Carolina. I grew up in a very rural area, and I'm from a family of 13. I had a brother named Gregory, and Greg would get the chance to go to a city pool that was a distance away. But we didn't have the finances where we could pay each time he wanted to go to the pool, nor the transportation. So Greg took it upon himself, along with some other young boys, and they went swimming at the gravel pit. And unfortunately, my brother was the only one that drowned. So I think it's important that since this community is changing and we have a lot of diversity here, that the young people have the opportunity to learn to swim, and I think this feature would be the perfect thing for it. In addition to that, when kids learn to swim, it can open up other avenues. My son, I've been in Bowie for about 22 years, and being in Bowie, yes, I was one of those parents that had to take my kids out of the 6th largest city in Maryland to Glen Norton to learn to swim. Fortunately, he did become a Navy man, and he operates a submarine, but and he just came home recently after being underwater for more than 3 months. Okay, so I want to just say, hearing that we are looking to build a facility that will bring on more than one type of activity is great. I don't want us to mess up and do like DC did with the first convention center. They built it in less than 10 years. They had to tear it down and build a larger facility. So if we're gonna go and do this, I think we need to do it big. It's unfortunate that the plan we started with for the hockey facility, or ice arena, I should say, wasn't expanded to what it originally was intended for. But even at that, it still didn't address aquatics, and we really are a large enough city that we should be able to have a free aquatic opportunity for our kids in this in this city, I should say. So that is all I have to say.
Well, thank you, ma'am. I appreciate it. Clifford Pulliam? Clifford Pulliam? Yeah, okay, I got you.
I can yield my time to Marvin Rogers.
Well, hey, Marvin, he's next up.
Okay.
And I can see why they call you Big Shoe.
You're on point tonight, Fred.
Yeah. I'm going to do 3 pointers, right?
There you go.
Good evening, Mayor, Councilman, Pro Team, friends. I'm here to speak on the behalf of the basketball players in this area. I was released from the Wizards in 2009. I played in the developmental league, won 2 championships for them, and then Gilbert Arenas missed 2 free throws and sent me back home. But since 2009, I have gotten over 150 kids into school. I've had 3 kids win the McDonald's All-American MVP. I've trained a lot of professional athletes from this area that also play in the NBA. And the hardest time that I have is getting them to stay here. What Mr. Pulliam and Mount Nebo is doing, when I heard about it, I was like, I gotta jump on it, because I'm on the phone with these athletes every day. They come home and they just come here for the basketball camps. They give back for a week and then they're gone. They're in New York, they're in LA, and that's where they're spending their money at. So if you all want to talk politics, we need to definitely develop something to keep them here so they can spend their money in Bowie, because they're getting paid. I currently was just on the phone with a parent. Her name is Janice Cook. Her son plays for the Golden State Warriors. He's a client of mine, and he barely even gets into the game. But they do very well, and he have nowhere to come home. This summer, Oladipo was home. He was back here in Bowie, and I brought this to Mr. Pulliam's attention a couple of months ago. Everyone loves Oladipo. He's probably the face of the NBA. He's one of the top 10 guys face of the NBA. You can't flip on the TV without seeing him or Kevin Durant and them guys like that. Oladipo had to rent the gym out. He had to rent the Bowie Center gym out. And a lot of the kids and the parents, they were mad outside. But if he don't get that workout in, he lose his contract. He's not Oladipo. He's not the face of the NBA. And some parents understood that, some parents didn't. You also have to consider that this area is the #1 basketball area in the country. And I'm talking from middle school, and we're not even talking NBA. The shoe companies stay in this area. I represent a lot of kids that's under top-notch shoe company teams. Nike, Adidas, and Under Armour fight in our backyard every year. It's competition. That's just what it is. If it's a top player that's getting ranked in this country, DMV Elite, they're calling me. I'm the guy that gets the phone call. So if you all, would support Mr. Pulliam and Mount Nebo, what they're doing, we're not only producing the top players in the country, but we need to keep them here. And like I said, so they can spend that money, because them guys are getting paid. So it's not a regular average salary. The NBA is the #1 overall. Like soccer gets big contracts, hockey, they get big contracts, but the NBA, the average salary is $4.6 million. And Mr. Mayor, that's not a walk in the park. So I'm definitely supporting what they're doing. And as far as with the facilities, we have to cater to them so they can stay here. The wooden floors, that's a must. All the new top equipment, that's a must. Because what's happening with Kevin Durant, what's happening with Mike Beasley, what's happening with Quinn Cook, what's happening with Oladipo, what's happening with Jeff Green, these are athletes that's from Prince George County. They're not from DC. They're from Prince George County. But what's happening with them, they're coming home, like I said, the private gyms are not here. And, they have to fly to LA. That's where they stay at. They have to go to New York. That's where they stay at. And that's where they spend their money at. So if they was here longer, they would spend their money on their family and friends, because they have everything. And I just think that that'd be good for the city, it'd be good for Prince George County, it'd be good for Bowie, and we can keep the money right here. That's all I have to say.
All right, thank you, sir. And our last speaker is Kevin Holmes from Blue Boys and Girls Club. Good to see you, sir.
Good to see you. Thank you. Council. I won't keep you long. Thank you. Good evening. Carrie spoke on our behalf earlier. It's good and important to us that the community sees us as a united Boys and Girls Club. We're both needed. We both support the children, so it's always good to work with the other side, if you will. But shortly, we just thank the council for taking this back under consideration. As I've stated in the past, it's very important for our members to have facilities to enjoy. Number of you have children, that's played in the clubs or participated in the clubs. So I think you all understand how important that is for us to provide cost-effective, high-quality, hard court services to satisfy those parents and kids. So we fully support the initiative. If there's anything that the Bowie Boys and Girls Club can do to help support the study, feasibility, or use, we stand prepared to do that. Again, 4,500 or so participants in our club, with nearly half utilizing some type of a hard court facility. That can certainly illustrate how important this topic is to us and to the community. So again, thank you. Appreciate the time, and go Air Force, Navy.
All right. Thank you, guys. I appreciate everybody's comments. Before we go to council questions to the city manager, did you have anything you want to wrap up?
Mr. Mayor, we're ready for the
Okay.
Q&A and direction from the council.
All right, so what you're looking for us tonight to do is to try to the extent possible,
Right.
narrow down your consultant commitment.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, questions? All right, Mr. Stead,
I want to say a big
who majored in dunking.
did not follow that one at all.
Basketball dunking.
Oh, okay. All right, I majored in French, but whatever.
You were on point tonight.
I apologize, my voice is a little rough tonight. I've been a bit under the weather. I want to say a big thank you to Pastor Weaver and the many members of his church community who have come out tonight and shared their thoughts and shared their perspectives. I agree there is a tremendous need for additional recreational facilities in this area. I agree that there's tremendous demand, and I agree that opportunities are missed when we don't provide the facilities that students, that young people, that people of all ages can make use of. And I agree with a lot of the sentiments that were expressed tonight in that regard. The biggest challenge that we have right now, and I'm going to speak very candidly for a moment, it's very easy for politicians to tell people exactly what they want to hear. Most of us have been conditioned our whole lives to know that anyone running for office telling us something is probably not being fully truthful. I'm going to do something that politicians rarely do, and I'm going to tell you exactly how I feel and exactly the reality we're facing, even if it's not something you necessarily want to hear. A lot of other alternative ideas and examples of other sports complexes were presented to us tonight, some in Howard County, some in Silver Spring. Howard County has a population of 320,000, which I think was brought up before. They have a total annual operating budget of $1.6 billion. Prince George's County, with its 1 million residents, has a total annual operating budget of $4 billion. Maryland National Capital Park and Planning, that we all send $500 to $800 to every single year in our property taxes. Maryland National Capital Park and Planning has one mission: parks, planning, recreational facilities, that's it. Their total budget just for Prince George's County is $350 million, and we all pay taxes to them. The total annual city Bowie budget is $55 million, and we have been eating into our reserves at an increasing rate in recent years just to cover the bills. We have an existing gym with 3 courts. It is completely inadequate to meet the needs of our residents and of members of sports clubs who use it. We have an existing ice rink that's on its last leg. The building is going to have to be condemned within the next couple of years, if not sooner. We have a couple of facilities already. The biggest challenge that we have is that in the last 12 years that the council has been debating recreational facilities, the biggest issue we've had is that we have been trying to bite off a lot more than we can chew. The reason why it's taken us 12 years for us to go from courts to ice to pools to courts back to ice and to still not be completely settled in our decision, the reason it's taken that long is because we simply cannot afford as a city to meet the tremendous need that there is out there. That's the challenge. And the ice rink, the dual ice rink facility that's been proposed, the only reason that that got through and it got thrown a very narrow vote and very contentiously, was because the ice hockey teams pay through the nose to use the existing facility. And our current courts, which lose 80 cents for every dollar we put into them, our current ice rink only loses about 20 cents for every dollar we put in, because those parents pay through the friggin' nose to use that facility. And when we talked to them last year, and last year they were angry at me because I was trying to shut down the ice rink last year, 2 years ago, whatever, I said, look, you guys are willing to pay through the nose to use this new facility, and you can make this thing break even, I'll support it. That's the only situation in which I can support it, because right now as a city, we can't afford to pay our current bills without eating to reserves. And that's the only reason why I even supported the dual rink facility. To be perfectly blunt with you, the city of Bowie does not have the money or the resources or the capacity to be involved in any of this. It really doesn't. I hear complaints from residents all the time that they can't get regular pickup basketball time at our city gym because it's monopolized by private groups, many of whom are full of students who aren't Bowie residents. But the facility is paid for exclusively by Bowie taxpayers. So when I go to residents in Old Bowie and families who lived here for years, and they're paying taxes through the nose for that facility, they're kind of upset to hear that we're renting out the gym to a single basketball player or to groups that don't necessarily include just Bowie residents. I'll be blunt, after I heard some of the proposals today, my only thought, and I know that some of my colleagues probably agree with me, is this is an awesome presentation. They need to hear it at Maryland National Capital Park and Planning. They need to hear it at the county. They need to hear it at the state. The reality is that we just don't have the resources to do any of this. We don't. If we wanted to triple our tax rate, yeah, sure, we could do it. But I guarantee you not a single one of us will be in office after we do that. So I just want to not dampen what I think is a good conversation, but I want to set expectations very clearly. You know, we're talking about the size of a facility that a 55,000 person city cannot afford. So I think that this is a good conversation. I think that we need to work with our Community Recreation Committee to sit down with our state lawmakers, one of whom is here, and I can tell you more about the state budget, or talk to our county council, or talk to Maryland National Capital Park and Planning. But I'll be honest, the alternative for me and the alternative for many of my colleagues up here to the current dual rink ice facility, the alternative isn't basketball. The alternative is nothing. The alternative is we get out of the recreational facility game because we can't afford it. We just can't. The private-public partnership that was mentioned, I don't know how the heck you plan on making money. Whatever your formula is, I would like to know, because that's alchemy. I don't know how you're going to make money. But we've been losing 80 cents on the dollar at our existing gym. I don't know how you're doing it. And the sorts of rates that I suspect you're going to charge, our groups aren't going to be willing to pay. They lose their minds every time we ask for a slight rate increase. They're not going to be willing to pay it, unless the city ends up just in a terrible lease agreement. So, again, not to dampen the occasion, but I'm just being very blunt. I'm being very blunt. I'm telling you what you don't want to hear, but I'm telling you the truth. We don't have the money. We need to take this up with Maryland National Capital Park and Planning. We need to take this up with the county. We can take this up with the state if we want. But the city of Bowie just does not have in its budget the resources to do this. We can barely afford the ice rinks. And like I said, the only reason we can do that is because they're promising to pay for it. So that's where I am. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Moore? Dr. Trout?
I'd like to make some brief comments right now, Mr. Mayor, and this probably get back after I've heard some of my colleagues. I've been on the council for 11 years, coming up, well, I've been elected 11 years ago on the 7th of November. And 11 years ago, there was no such thing as an indoor sports facility, because I brought it up. So it couldn't have been 12 years ago, because I wasn't on the council 12 years ago. This was brought up about 9 years ago. One of the things when it was brought up in the feasibility study, this is just for information only, it did recommend that the city not go it alone, that the city go it with a partner. And I'll hold my comments for later.
Okay. All right, good.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, council, and thank you, everyone, for coming out here this evening. Now, I'm going to say something a little separate and different than my
my colleague to my right here said tonight, I really believe that this is something that can be done. I do know, in fact, that it can be done. We understand the cost of money, the cost of sacrifice, the cost of getting things done. If we looked at everything and just simply said, you know, this is going to not happen, then, you know, we won't move forward with anything. So my thoughts are, one, both organizations, I was very, very much so impressed by the presentations. Mr. Booker's presentation as far as the rev sharing, I want to have staff work with council and your organization and exploring how that could be a possibility. Mount Nebo, first of all, I want to, you know, applaud you for being what churches have always been in my community and providing that foundation. So I want to applaud you for stepping up to the plate, seeing where there is a need here in our community to where we have a need for recreation, and then coming forward and saying, you know, City of Bowie, we can be that partner. You know, public-private partnerships have worked throughout this country and throughout our nation for years. And, you know, we can make this happen within Bowie. I know that my colleagues here want to see recreation, you know, and we want to see it happen. And I know that, you know, it is a desire of the mayor and the council here to see that our young people in our communities have options such as basketball, swimming, and pickup ball, and as you mentioned earlier, squash. You know, if it's a wave of the future, I want to be a part of that. You know, so I don't want, rather than to looking and for reasons as to why we can't do, let's look for reasons as to how we are going to make this happen. So both organizations tonight, again, I want to applaud you. I like to see a partnership and with Mount Nebo explored. I like the community housing initiative group that came out, Mr. Booker, your group. I like to see where it could be explored for rev sharing, because I from what I heard from you is that this was not a cost to the city of Bowie up front at all. And if you would not mind, could you approach the bench? Because I want to not, you know, I've been listening to everything that has been said this evening, and all that I'm hearing is from two organizations who want to work with us and making this happen, and I want to explore it. I don't want to close the door. The door is open. Okay, Mr. Booker, and my question to you, you said that this would not be any upfront cost to the city of Bowie.
That's correct.
So at what point will we be looking at costs? I mean, and I mean, if you don't have that information, I understand totally, you can provide that information to staff as we move forward through the process.
So the basic structure is initially we would put the money up based on getting a secured lease from the city. And so we would secure the financing for the facility. We would then build the facility, manage it, in accordance with Bowie residents having access to the facility. In addition to that, we would have the tournaments and other opportunities that we would make revenue. After a break-even point for the facility, then there would be a revenue share.
Okay.
Formula that we would have to come together on, where we would then share any additional revenues from tournaments, training, and any other revenue that would be coming out of the facility itself.
Okay, in hearing what you were saying in your presentation, I like that it was no cost to the city. We would be open to exploring that and then looking at the revenue sharing moving forward. Right. Because if we know that we have a deficit of court space and recreation throughout our city, so I think it is to my knowledge and feelings and beliefs that this is something that we would want to pursue on both ends. And I have a question for Mount Nebo's representative as well, who came forward this evening. Again, thank you, Mr. Booker, for that, for providing that answer and for coming out this evening. And just wanted to make sure I have Mr. Cliff first now. Okay, all right, just want to make sure I have names correct. Question about with Mount Nebo. This facility, what cost are we looking at from, I mean, and I know you may not have that firsthand, but percentage-wise, have you guys done any like high-level thoughts as to how this relationship would look with the city of Bowie? And I know you did mention other, and I know being, first of all, that Mount Nebo is a pillar of the community, and with relationships, I know you had MC Jim Brown out recently to the church, and I know with his network and the network of people that Pastor Weaver and the congregation knows that yes, you're not a dream, you are reality. You're just looking and making and implementing this. So I'm going to say this, and I mean it respectfully. I happen to know what God can do. Okay. I am a believer, I am Pentecostal, and I know that what God can do, okay? I am sitting in front of you, living proof. So I want to explore those opportunities with Mount Nebo, but my question to you, sir, is to asking you, how do you see the relationship working? I want to get a visual of how the relationship would work between Nebo and the city of Bowie, Mount Nebo and the city of Bowie.
Well, we've had conversations with your city manager and his staff. Those conversations didn't get that deep into specifics about relative equities on this build. We have envisioned, though, as a starting point, a 50-50 revenue sharing in the development of this. And we understood from the beginning that the city of Bowie would struggle to come up with its share. We have partners that stand to the ready to step up, and as to how much we could get from them, that remains to be seen. I mean, we would need to be annexed. We need to have infrastructure put onto the property to make this possible, which would increase the value of the land. I don't encourage the RACDC to get into any debt for this. So it would have to be donations, grants, naming rights, contracts with some of the major companies. And through that, we could cobble together, we envision 50% of what would be built. Now, I know the city has other options for raising funds, like floating bonds and, revenue bonds and that sort of thing.
And that's where the the public comes into the
That's correct, and the nonprofit also has those options as well.
Okay.
So if we get to the point where we're trying to divvy out, we have a number in mind, we start doing that research and come up with those resources.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Pullen. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask of Councilman Gardner, we could not afford a $1.5 million trail last year. Every one of us voted against a $1.5 million trail last year because we couldn't afford it, right? The alternative was to raise taxes on folks. And we collect revenue through property taxes, which, as you know, is extremely regressive. So how much are we willing to raise taxes to do this?
Well, Councilmember Steph, looking at it, how both organizations have come in front of us, they are not putting any additional burden on the residents of the city of Bowie. What I'm saying to the council and to both organizations that come out tonight is to allow our staff to explore how we can make this happen. Rather than closing the door, let's open the door. Now, no disrespect to the trail as opposed to recreation. Now, when, in the household that I grew up in, as an adult, I have to determine this month, I'm going to pay the cable bill, or I may pay the light bill or the car insurance. You have to manage what is most important. And no disrespect to anyone as far as the Heritage Trail, I believe that recreation comes a little bit closer to being a little bit more important to our residents in the city of Bowie than the trail.
Mr. Lakewood.
Thank you. I'd like to thank you all for coming out. The dialogue has been fantastic. I'd like to start, if I could, with just a couple questions. Mr. Pulliam, can I ask you a few questions regarding the Mount Nebo, excuse me, I've forgotten the...
Richard Allen, CDC.
Richard Allen, CDC. Thank you. I learned Mount Nebo, and that's the way I'm going to forever try and have to change my mindset on that. This is truly a grand vision, and I think, and I want to kind of get a feel from you, what is the time frame for your, a notional time frame for getting your facilities and all of this infrastructure in place?
Well, simple answer is it depends. We're looking at the necessity, as I said, to bring infrastructure onto the land, which would be facilitated by annexation by the city of Bowie. Whether or not we build a facility, we would still be looking to be annexed by the city of Bowie because of the other building projects that we intend to build that need that infrastructure. We are right across the street, Route 301, from city water and sewer. Right now, we're on well and septic, and we can't build our senior housing on well and septic, and this facility also is not going to be built on well and septic. It has to be built on city water. So, you know, we have a lot of interest as far as development partners who would build on our land, but a lot of that depends upon whether we have the infrastructure and the city of Bowie annexation in place. So, as I said, it depends on how quickly that happens. And then in the meanwhile, we do have partners that we are now starting to have conversations with. We just lack a number. We just know that the model that we're using is the $20 million model. That's the Roger Carter Center in Ellicott City. And I believe that we can build something along those lines. That's only 5 years old. So I believe we can build something along those lines for a comparable amount of money. So we've been looking at the possibility of raising the $10 million, maybe 15, in case it goes up to $30 million. But it would be a co-venture with the city of Bowie.
So, just on the water issue, I'm for the life of me, I can't think of whether that's actually city or county water. I would.
WSSC.
It'd be WSSC, which I don't think that you need to get annexed for that. WSSC, I think, will serve regardless of annexation.
But it will expedite things if we are coming in as a partner with the city of Bowie.
No doubt, particularly if we got the money and
Right.
to speed things along or to be the seed money. Have you had any conversations with Park and Planning about this?
Just very initial conversations.
And what were their thoughts?
Well, I mean, Park and Planning is pretty much of the same position as you are. They are revenue strapped. I think they're all in with the Liberty Sports Park build. But we haven't had any real detailed conversations on what their involvement would be.
But as from your vision for your organizational vision for the property, it sounds like this is moving ahead one way or another, as is a senior assisted living as well as just active living. What else do you have in mind for that?
We're looking at the low-hanging fruit. I mean, you know, we were looking at the senior building. We've been looking at that all along. But once we started having conversations with the city of Bowie, and that partnership possibility rose up, then that became more of the low-hanging fruit. So we've concentrated a lot of our efforts on that now. But we want to build some kind of athletic facility irrespective of what happens with the city. But I do not want the RACDC to be in the recreational management business. All right, so that's the only sticking point there.
Okay. Thank you, appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Can I ask, why do you not want the RCDC to be in the recreational management business?
There's a certain level of expertise that's required for that, and we don't have the bandwidth for that. I mean, our job is to develop our property, not to get into the specialized aspects of managing a pool, for example. Everything would have to be contracted out, if not managed by the county or the city.
Right, and that's part of my concern. It's that, you know, whether someone paid for the upfront costs or part of the money was raised, the reason why we lose so much money on our existing recreational facilities is because, as you say, it's expensive. I mean, our existing courts lose a ton of money every year, and they're just basketball courts.
Yeah, your existing facilities don't have enough diversity to be monetized in the way that you would make a profit. Basketball is limited ability to produce revenue. all the hard court sports, you know, they're good to have for the seniors and for the kids, but they don't produce a whole lot of revenue. Now, these facilities that are out in Howard County, they have a multiplicity of ways to rent the facility, various activities, various membership levels. Now, I'm waiting on the numbers on those facilities. I've actually done a FOIA request on all of them. And I expect to have that within the next 2 weeks, their business plans, their operational P&Ls and that sort of thing. I'll be more educated on how they make money on these. But ultimately, you know, RACDC is not standing in the way of the city to provide city services to the residents, but we do want to support the city's effort to do so. But, you know, we are not positioned capital-wise to actually stand in the way of doing that on our own. So it would have to be some kind of a partnership.
No, I appreciate that, and I'd be very curious if you'd be willing to share kind of what you discovered talking to, from those numbers, from those other facilities, because that's part of my concern, is that we're going to spend, because we've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on consultants over the last several years. We could create a whole new city department for the amount of money we've spent researching these questions.
Right, that was the intent.
And my concern is that they're ultimately going to tell us, well, for you to make money, you really need to build an $100 million facility. And we all agreed that 40 was too much, right? That 40 that for the 2 rinks and courts. So my concern here, and again, I'm sorry for throwing water on stuff, but it's nice to have at least one person who does. My concern is that we're going to end up having to take on a project that we literally just cannot do, right? In order to you know, reach that point where it could make money. But I am very curious to continue to have the conversation, and anything that you learn would be really helpful if you could share that with
I can
us
do
and
that,
staff.
and if I can also suggest the Leonsis organization that owns the Capitals and the Wizards, they're really looking to promote hockey. It would be a nice partnership if they were to help defray some of the costs of your hockey rink, and you could convey some of that funding over to basketball, since there is such high incentive for them to promote hockey in this area, especially given the fact that they just won a Stanley Cup. So we are actually reaching out to that organization as well.
That'd be very nice if they would be willing to pay money, because so far we've gotten very limited feedback from staff on the ability, on our ability to get outside organizations to step out and help out with the ice component.
Right.
If someone were to find a way to help defray some of the construction costs, that would make a huge difference for us in being able to provide a greater diversity of services.
It's in the works.
I really appreciate that. Thank you.
And thank you. And Mr., well, I don't think I have a follow-on question other than on the model that the Community Housing Initiative, you guys have kind of laid out. I see this as you acquire the cash funding for the construction, oversee the construction of the project, and then we lease it back from you.
Correct.
And then we operate, no, you operate.
We operate the facility.
And the revenue from that operations, how do I cover my rent from that?
So there's multiple revenue sources. So there's tournament revenue source there, and we're exploring different options with respect to the facility, not just traditional training. So we've had some initial conversations with some physical therapy organizations about coming in. We've had conversations with gyms to lease space from us, such as Planet Fitness and gyms of that nature that would lease space from us, which would also defray some of the cost. But overall, the revenue that we would derive from the tournaments and other ancillary activities at the facility would then go into a pot. Obviously, we have to cover our break even. From that point forward, we would then look at a revenue share model that would then bring money back to you. In addition to the fact that you would also get some tax revenue, as well as because of the large events that we would be bringing, there would be some economic development impact from that for the city as well. So there would be money, revenue derived, not just from the facility itself, but from the people coming for the events. And on my team, we have people who have done these events all over the country. We have about 40 years of experience in doing these events, specifically in basketball. We're also bringing on some people who have done volleyball tournaments, who bring those tournaments in hand with them and ready to move them to this facility. Along with the basketball tournaments, they're ready to move some of these tournaments to the facility once it's built. So a lot of this won't be that we have to go out and find events. We will partner with some events, and then we would be looking to create some unique events at the facility itself. And the people on our team have experience of doing the events, managing them, and really acquiring the teams from all over the region, all over the country to come and play, both volleyball and basketball.
All right. Thank you, appreciate it.
I got a quick follow-up.
Yeah.
So obviously, it's very premature, but we would be paying a lease.
Correct.
For the facility. In the process of figuring out what you guys would be offering, what would be your willingness to sit down and work with, the city council, with members of our community recreation association, in kind of figuring out what sorts of services would be best to use? Because my concern is that in this partnership, if, it's just market-driven, my worry is that we're going to end up giving away city turf to offer services that might be great for outside groups and tournaments, but that won't actually serve our community. And then we're going to be back at square one.
Right, no.
How do we figure that out?
Yeah, so I think that's an important point, and I probably didn't bring that up earlier. Programming is going to be critical to the success of this facility. And a lot of that programming will be local Bowie-related programming, and it will have to be that, because this is a facility that is in Bowie. It is kind of adding value to the Bowie community directly. These events are not where people coming from outside of Bowie. Those events are not happening on a daily basis. What's happening every day is people from Bowie going to the facility, utilizing it, taking their children to the facility to utilize it, et cetera, et cetera. So definitely would want to work with the city in developing programming, working with Boys and Girls Club and other organizations, so we could have programming that meets the needs of people locally for after-school care and things of that nature. So that would all be a part of the programming for the facility.
Now that encompasses quite a lot. You mentioned that there might be some need to expand on the existing facility. I mean, I'm sure you've seen the existing ice rink. It's relatively small. As you heard, we barely got finished through the presentations, and we heard about the need for aquatics and the need for football and indoor turf. I don't think a month has gone by that I haven't sat down with a parent who's told me that their particular sport has to get done, and how dare we not include their particular sport. And I'll be blunt, I've been so inundated with that in the last 2 years that I'm frankly of the mind that if we could go back to the beginning, we wouldn't have gotten into recreation in the first place, because it's just open season for mission creep, right? We start out with one little thing, and before you know it, people feel entitled to have everything, and then leave us to pay for it, right? Which we can't do. So, I'm curious to continue the conversation, but I'm extremely worried about mission creep setting into this and how the details, the finances would actually work out.
Right. I mean, in our model, what we were looking to do is to expand to about 8 courts, which would then give us the flexibility that if we were to have a massive tournament, we'd have those 8 courts that would be able to manage that. When we're not having that, we would have 2 courts that would be designated for sports like lacrosse, soccer, where you could practice on those courts. So you'd have indoor capability for the additional sports for training purposes.
So there's currently 1 ice rink there. So you're talking about effectively
expanding
by a considerable factor.
This would be about a 100,000 square foot facility when it's all said and done.
So we currently have an extremely expensive master plan that we're carrying out for Allen Pond Park. And I got residents who are already beating down my door because we're cutting down like 5 trees. Okay. But you're telling me we're basically gonna eat up a large chunk of Allen Pond Park, which our residents who we hear from every day care about.
Well, we haven't laid out a master plan for it yet, so I don't know exactly where we're going to be growing the facility. That's something we'll be talking to staff about, but
Okay.
we'll definitely make that take that in consideration with respect to cutting trees and kind of, that'll be a part of the plan when we look at.
Would you be open to working with us at a different location?
Yeah, we just put that location forward because we knew it was a facility that was going dormant. And so we thought it would be a great idea to take that facility that basically you probably have to tear down or do something with. We said, hey, let's take that facility and it will save costs because it's already a wall, some walls that, you just build on top of that. And so reduce costs. We could get it done a lot faster because it's an existing facility. Take into account the necessary planning with respect to trees and things of that nature, and we thought we could get it online early. We're definitely open for anything that works for you with respect to this opportunity.
Gotcha. Because part of the challenge with the existing rink is that staff told us the whole thing needs to be demolished and started over with because of the age of the building, because of the type of materials that were used 50 years ago when it was built. And so, I mean, we would be tearing down a building to start over completely.
Oh, okay. That's
because of the extent of the age of that structure.
right. I was not informed of that.
Right.
So that's fine.
So I just want to make sure that got out there.
Yeah, that's
so it might be helpful if we talked about a number of different locations and staff.
Yeah, we'd be open to looking at exploring additional locations. But again, our model is still the same. It's we would put the money up front, then we would have a long-term lease, and then there would be revenue share on all of the major events that we would do, and we would come up with a formula where you guys would agree to it.
I think that sort of model is probably the closest thing that would bring us to being able to affect something, to be honest. And I'd be interested in continuing a conversation.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions?
No, thank you, I appreciate it, thank you. I guess I'll make a few comments at this point. When looking at the fundamental problem, I went up to the gym, this was some time ago, and we had a number of people that were, the facility was being fully used. But it was being used because it was a tournament. And so the local kids couldn't play a pickup game. They couldn't just come up to the facility and play basketball, just like you want your kid to be able to hop on their bike and go off to the park and play tennis or what have you. And so as I look at the problem we have, it's a local problem. It's a very basic community-centric problem. Our neighborhood kids don't have an opportunity to go use facilities that are available. And there just aren't enough basketball courts out there for them to use. And I think we have gotten ourselves confused as kind of a city, this notion that somehow this is a business, that there should be a return on investment, that there should be a cost coverage. And the problem with that is that in doing so, the minute we start doing so, we start leasing out the court space, we remove it from availability from the people, for the people from whom we originally intended to provide the facility. So in the attempts to recover some of the costs for the building, we end up boxing out the people we intended to serve. So we find ourselves right now, I think, with a facility, multi-use. It's a wonderful facility, but it is oversubscribed. And I think we need to assess how many people are using it, whether they're taxpayers, whether we should at all be hosting any tournaments if we're not first meeting the requirements of our constituents. And I suspect that we really do need some additional basketball space. I shouldn't say basketball, I should say multi-court, everything from pickleball to volleyball to basketball to whatever the community wishes. So I think the problem we have is that we're taking a local need, in starting to look at it in a regional perspective, because I think there's a regional need as well. And I think that the grander project that's being contemplated on Mount Nevo's property is a regional need that is genuine, that there's no doubt that that needs to be there. I just don't know that that's the same need that the city and its residents have. There's an overlap, to be sure. You know, we can always use a few more spaces to have kids go play, but I'm not sure it's the same when you look at the grand nature of this. And I think it would be awesome for the community at large. And I think, unfortunately, we have kind of those two things. It's both the profit and loss aspect. And the way I see it, the only reason we have a city gym is because it's not profitable for anybody to do it, or the government wouldn't be doing it. If it was profitable, a private sector firm would be building gyms all over the place, because all my gyms are full. The problem is I have a constituency that expects to be able to use city gyms with little or no cost, and therefore immediately it loses its economic value. So we're certainly in the business of providing a service that doesn't have economic footing to stand on its own, and I'm okay with that. My trouble is that I'm not okay digging deeper to go build, even if we're looking at additional facilities, any facility that is designed with the intent of making it available for tournaments, because I have yet to have a single constituent complain to me that they are unable to have a tournament at the facility. The only thing people are complaining about is my kid can't play. There's no practice time. The team doesn't have enough time. But yet we're building in this notion that somehow all of these facilities really need to support a tournament environment so they can offset the cost. Well, it's offsetting the cost at the price of not serving the constituents we desire to build the thing for to begin with. So it seems to me that what the city needs to really look at, perhaps the smallest type of operation, and there may be multiples. There may be one that's in the south that's a small tension structure, and one closer to Old Bowie that serves the community in that area, and that these are really community courts, not regional basketball centers, not a hope for a profit on this, because we're never going to make the profit on it. But that doesn't mean that there isn't also room for a regional facility that is much bigger and that serves a bigger community. And I think that we ought to be open to seeing what we can do to help support that, but not as a principal participant in the organization. So anyway, that's my thoughts on the matter. I just don't think that, as Councilman Stev said, we just don't have that kind of cash hanging around. I can maybe sneak in $5 million for, or $6 million for a single court facility, and then maybe a few years later or 5 years later we still have continuing need, and maybe we slip another $5 million in somewhere down the road. But I just don't see us having another $20, $30 million worth of capital. I'll say this, though. I'm impressed with the numbers, because I like the numbers you got for what you anticipate your facilities to cost, because we've clearly not seen that in our own efforts, and we've seen nothing but more expensive and less infrastructure and more cost. But I do think we ought to keep the channel open. I think we ought to pursue, and I think there ought to be some level of engagement, but I'm not sure what it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Crowd, a couple last questions, and I'm going to wrap it up. Get a vote.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a question to staff. I've heard the mention of parking planning on several occasions tonight. I just want to get some clarification. My understanding is that parking planning is a bi-county entity, so it's not just Prince George's County. My understanding is it's conglomeration of Montgomery County and Prince George's County.
That's correct.
So therefore, you just can't just capriciously go to parking planning. It's more involved, because you have to, not only are you talking to Prince George's County, but you also have to talk to Montgomery County?
Yes, it's a double entity.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay. With the CHI, the proposal by Mr. Booker, I'm glad that Mayor Pro Tem asked this question because that was one of the questions I had. And my other question, more detailed question is it not correct that you can't do anything with the old structure until the new structure is completed? Otherwise, you'll have no ice in the city of Bowie? Is that correct?
Well, that's correct, yes.
Oh, so, okay. I just want to get my facts correct. Okay. So with regard to staff's proposal, is staff amenable to looking at both Mount Nebo, and since this is the first time that we heard from the community, the CHI organization, I don't know if the Recreation Committee has had a chance to see that particular proposal. Do you know if they have?
I don't think so, sir, no. The community housing initiative is, from my perspective, is more of a funding option. If and when we get to the point where we're prepared to do something, and in this area, and then, you know, we would have to make a decision how we would fund it. And then what Mr. Booker's perspective, then he would be really relevant to the discussion. It's okay, because I think he's generally in agreement with the idea of building a indoor court facility of some type. But that's his primary advantage to us is a funding mechanism where they would build it, lease it back to us at a cost. Now, it would not be something we would expect not to have to pay a decent lease payment. And then, but that would relieve us of the borrowing requirement.
Right.
And so, but no, he hasn't had an opportunity to bring that to the Recreation Committee or anybody like that.
Now, I don't know if we've had discussions with Mr. Booker about my last question. Is he aware of the fact that he can't start any building over there? Let's say if we did go along with that proposal, not saying that we are, but if for example, we did go along with that proposal, is he aware of the fact that he can't do anything with that particular proposal until the new facility?
Well, we haven't talked in that level of detail, sir. I mean, he recently completed his briefing, and he's been working hard on it. But I believe he knows that we would have to, transition from one ice facility to another. He was not aware, I don't think, that of the latest structural condition report that we received on the current ice rink, that it has a 1 to 2 year shelf life remaining.
Right.
Right.
Okay. That's all my questions.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Let me see if I can kind of summarize some things here. And let me start off with what might be kind of like a candid assessment. You know, I started this conversation myself with trying to remedy a current need for a couple more basketball courts. So what I'm looking at, my primary focus is to look at, I like staff's recommendation, look at option 2 as the structure of the metal building, as that was my original intent, to look at that at a site that is available at reasonable cost and whatever. But I'm impressed with the two presentations we got now. I have no problem with staff looking at those two things and see. But the bottom line, we have to look at what we want and what we can afford, what we need, what we want, and all those things get caught in there. Clearly, I think we should be open to creative things. And one of the things I think we could be looking at is we got a whole lot of new leadership down in Upper Marlboro and some, I guess, in some state functions as well. We might actually be able to get some more support for some cooperative ventures with the county. I think putting some county money into these things and some state money in it is a credible situation, Mr. State Delegate. I'm not going to put you on the spot, no. But there's a time for other people to step up and help. You know, I think the point has been made. We spend a lot of money to park and planning every year. I think the last number I looked at was something like 16, 18 million bucks a year. And I think it's quite credible to say that we don't get that kind of return. And so it's those are the things I think this study should look at. Look at what we, you know, what the focus should be, is looking at some options, looking at things that are doable, looking at some things that offer some creative opportunities, which may or may not be doable, but I don't want to make that decision until I look at them and look at the financing options and look at the credibility of the financing options and all of those conditions as well. I guess where I'm looking at is one area, I guess Mr. Wolfley and I share a focus on, you know, is putting our funds where, you know, where the kids are and what they need to do and how they need to do it and get them in there. I'd much rather see the gym overcrowded than see the kids hanging around the shopping center or something like that. And, you know, I guess I'm as tight with what I call OPM as anybody. You know, that's other people's money. And I think if you look at the way we've managed money in this city, we do a pretty fair job of it. So, you know, I live by a certain credo, is that there's two ways to look at every problem. One is you can't do that because, and the other one is there are obstacles to overcome. And I think if we look at it in a second perspective, and we might look at what we might be doing, and we might be able to do something on an incremental basis. I don't want to stifle our review. I don't want to limit the review. There's a limited amount of money. I think you got about $100 grand to do this. But I think if we look at staff's recommendations, which I think is very thoughtful and very focused, and we kind of cut a couple of things out, narrow our focus to a couple of kinds of buildings and a couple of potential sites, and then look at these other creative options, that'll give us something we can make a decision from. And like I say, I don't want people living here with unfounded expectation that this is going to happen tomorrow. I mean, we've got funding in there to do this study, and then we got another budget process coming up, you know, next spring. And it's going to take some issues. I don't know that we'll be able to do everything everybody wants. There's no way. One thing I learned early on, Abraham Lincoln was right. You can't make all the people happy all the time. And my friend Mr. Truman was right. If you want a friend in this business, get a dog. But like I say, I think I've heard some good thoughts tonight, and I think there's a possibility or a probability of a pathway to success on this. And I think our next step should be to give staff some specific direction on
Mr. Mayor,
where we want them to go, and I get an idea from staff as to when we might be able to get at least an initial response back and go from there.
Mr. Mayor, to that extent, I'd like to make a motion to direct staff to do two things. The first is to continue to work with the Richard Allen, I want to get their name right, the Richard Allen Community Development Corporation, to assess in more specific details what a partnership could look like. I'd also like staff to do this with ADDO and the Community Housing Initiative, because it sounds like there are a lot of information gaps there. And continue to work with both to get more specific in what potential partnerships could look like, what costs would be, who other partners could be in these arrangements. That's the first thing I'd like to direct staff to do. I don't know, I don't have a sense of what a reasonable turnaround time is, but could we expect that further conversations could be had so that we could hear a little bit about this by our first meeting in December?
Well, I'm not sure we can meet that. We'd have to, if all that you want me to do is talk to them and work out some more details about a potential partnership with either organization, yeah, we can bring something back in December and talk in more detail. However, if we're going to include structures, we're going to talk in some detail about the recommendation where we look at option 2 and tension structure or metal building. That might take a little longer because that would involve architects and designs, and that could take until January. But if all you want to do is come back and talk in detail about a potential partnership, we can do that in a few weeks. Not as well as we could normally, but we do have the holidays approaching.
Why don't we aim to do that then, and get a sense of what these potential partnerships might look like first and foremost?
Well, I think it would, at least for 60 days, to sit and talk to, so we can get everybody down and work out some details. That would be for that particular, and we could bring that back in January and talk in specific detail about it, if that's what the majority of the population of the.
I'm comfortable with that, to push that back to January and to have as much detail as possible then. The second thing I would like for staff to do.
Is that a motion?
Yes.
Do you need a second?
Well, one motion included two directives.
The motion, are you basically motioning staff's recommendation?
No, I apologize. So the motion is to have staff go back and work with both presenters that we heard from tonight to get more details on what partnerships with each of them could look like. Get more details on what specific structure, costs, and things would look like. And to come back to us in January with a fuller report on the conversations that they had with those potential partners. That's the motion.
Is that your motion?
Working up the costs from the options we heard tonight, plus their options?
Correct.
Is that your motion?
That is my motion.
I can second that motion because that's in line with what you had already asked Mr. Pulliam, because Mr. Pulliam, if I'm not mistaken, said he would be able to get some additional monetary figures for you in X number of times, and that would be well within the period of time that we're talking about. So therefore, I second that motion.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Schraub.
Everybody understand what the motion is? Staff, and you understand what's going to...
We got it.
Are there any questions on the motion? All right, all in favor? Aye. Any opposition? Done.
Mr. Mayor?
What?
I think that was unanimous.
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to see if I was correct.
Yeah. Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And before I close out, I forgot to acknowledge someone tonight that's here, a good friend of mine, Lieutenant Colonel, retired Winnie Turner, my friend, and she accompanied her husband this evening tonight to recognize his 60th birthday. Thank you, Winnie, for coming out. Good seeing you. Haven't seen you.
Look, I'm an old Army grunt, and I'm surrounded by colonels all the time.
all this brass. All
right.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Let's go.
And with that, I'd like to have a motion to...
You make a motion.
Oh, I'd like to move to close.
No, I think you want to move to go to executive session.
I'm sorry, to go to an executive session, pardon me, to consult with counsel to obtain legal advice and to consult with staff consultants and other individuals about pending or potential litigation.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Question on the motion? All in favor? Opposed? Good night, folks.
Good night,
Thank you all very
folks.
much.
Good night,
Appreciate all
everyone.
your input.
Good night.